Welcome back, guys. Glad to have you here. In today's video, we're going to be traveling back through time, and I'm going to be showing you guys the very first outdoor aviary I ever built. Now, this aviary was built in the early 2006, 2007, and back then I used to breed a variety of different pigeons, from the Cuban powder thieves to messenger pigeons, to a variety of other pigeons from around the world. Now, eventually, in 2010, 2009, 2010, everything changed and I started to breed a variety of different African and Australian species of finches. So I converted this outdoor aviary, which was an 8x8, into my finch aviary. Now, the footage that you're seeing here is very old footage. This was recorded probably around 2010, 2011. And this is what the aviary used to look like. It was very simple. When you first go in, to the left, I had a flight that measured about 6 feet long by 6 feet tall and about 3 feet wide. And towards the right is where I used to keep the cages. Now, these cages were very different back then. The cage that I had were not individual cages. It was pretty much a very long cage with different sets of dividers where you can pull them apart, turned into large flights or individual cages for each one of the species. And as you can see, although the footage is not very good, you can see that I had a large variety of different species back then. I had some fire finches, red-cheeked cordon blues, blue-breasted cordon blues, which is a species of finch that we have not seen in U.S. aviculture for quite some time. I believe the last time that we had these was back in 2010, and it is very unfortunate because I've always said it over and over again. There's so many species of finches that we will lose if we don't focus on them, and unfortunately this was one of them. I also had in here yellow-winged petilias, Gouldian finches, greenback twin spots, canaries, and a large variety of other species. And this was where everything was first created. This is where it all began, where the obsession started, and now it has progressed into what we have today. But this aviary has been sitting abandoned pretty much for a couple of years now. I think since 2015 I hadn't kept anything in here. Unfortunately, the roof had been messed up, it was leaking water inside, and it was just an empty space. So I decided to fix it up. I fixed the roof, and now I was debating whether to turn this into a quarantine facility for the new birds that I would bring into the aviary, have them quarantine here before introducing them into the aviary that I have set up in the garage, or whether I was going to turn this into a location where I can bring all of the birds that were molting, all of my young birds, and have them go through the molt here. Since this isn't temperature controlled, it tends to get, I don't want to say too hot, but it is the perfect temperature in here for birds to molt. The temperature inside of this aviary usually stays around the 90s, whether it's around 85 degrees to about 95 degrees, and it ranges back and forth depending on the day. As you can see, I have a large fan in here to make sure that I have very good air circulation. But when birds are going through their molt, you want to have a space for them that is like this. You want to have a space that has good heat so that the birds are able to go through their molt correctly. Now, usually if you kept them, and I've noticed this in the past in my indoor aviary, when I keep the birds and they start to go through the molt, sometimes when they get stressed, if it's too cold inside, they seem to fluff up, and that affects them. So I decided I wasn't going to turn this into a quarantine facility because it was just too big, and I don't often quarantine a large amount of birds at once. So it would be better to have this place set up, which is an 8x8, fill it up with as many cages as I could, and kind of bring out here all of the birds before they start going through their molt. That way I'm able to control how well they molt in here, and I don't have an excess amount of feathers just going everywhere inside of my indoor aviary. Because let's face it, when these birds start to molt, the feathers that they start to lose in the dust and everything is just insane. So this is a better controlled environment for them to kind of go through their molt until they finish. So that's what I decided to do with it, turned it into that. And right now at the moment, I currently have about 40 cages in here with not a lot of different species right now. Pretty much all I've brought out here are the Gouldian finches, which, by the way, so many of you have been asking me to start working with this species and asking me why I don't keep Gouldians and where are the Gouldians and so on, that I decided to start working with them again. And I've kept this a secret for a while now, But here, as you can see, you're obviously seeing some chicks that are starting to molt, finish their molt, or starting their molt and are coloring up. So this is a species that I will start to focus back up on, because after all, this is one of the reasons why I got into this hobby years ago. I fell in love with this bird and its beautiful colors. Alright guys, well, this is going to be the end of another video. I really hope that you guys have enjoyed this traveling through time and seeing where my obsession first started. The very first aviary that I ever built, some of the birds that I used to keep back then, and so on. I know the footage wasn't the best, but unfortunately back in 2010 camera phones weren't what they are nowadays. I hope you've enjoyed it. Like always, if you did, remember to hit the like button and consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. Like always, I hope that you all have a wonderful day, and we will see each other in the next video.